her name was Emma Falter, which I think she was kin to Erskine, I'm not positive. He had 9 children by her, which is the Millers that are here. The dedication to our bell tower today is to Baxter Miller, which was his second son, and to Mr. Edison Miller, which of course was his grandson. He was largely responsible for building this first church over here, because he was
chief of everything.
That's right. Today, I live on his oldest son's property, and I have property that I rent on Baxter Miller property. So I couldn't see any of that property going out of the family. And I'm proud of the Miller name. I'm proud of the people here. I'm proud of the dedication to Uncle Baxter. He was my uncle, of course, and Cousin Edson. They came from good stock. Christopher Columbus Miller and Baxter and Edson are buried in the Miller graveyard back of the old house, which is the oldest house on the island. Now, I'll talk briefly about the old church, because it's getting almost time to eat here. I took a picture of the old one that was still here before this was finished. And I remember as a child going up the steps, and the bell was in the bell tower, and it had a huge rope. And we kids used to take the rope to ring the bell, and it would pull us right off the ground, because we were not supposed to do that. And you went in the church, there were pews on each side. Over to the right was a piano. The choir was up on the right-hand side of the church. It had a railing with a large center red velvet chair with 2 chairs between, with a pulpit in the middle. I have the chairs still, which I would dedicate back to the church if it were needed or wanted. They were in rather disrepair when the old church was finished, so I paid $100 for them, but I will go down them back if we ever want a place to put them back in. There was a kindergarten on the right-hand side. On back of the pulpit, there was a room that had the middle-aged children. Upstairs, there were 4 rooms. Mr. Nace Fulcher had the one that I went to until he quit doing it. Mr. Lloyd Scarborough had the room to the right. My grandmother, Mamie Miller, had the one in the center, and Miss Pearl Midget had the one on the left-hand side. My first memory of the superintendent was Mr. Cyrus Gray, who these are descendants. He was the one who started the, when you left the church, Psalm 90:12, which is my favorite psalm in the whole Bible. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. When he quit being superintendent, Mr. Charlie Gray took over. He took the same dismissal. Can you hear me better? Since time is short, I think I'm going to turn it over to the Grays now.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know how this thing works, but, can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, what I wanted to talk about was back when I was a child, we had Christmas Eve was the biggest night of the year, and it was held at the church, and they had a huge tree that they would bring in, and the girls that were going to get dolls for Christmas had their dolls were hung on the tree, and everybody, and they ordered candies and nuts and oranges, and that's something we just never ever saw. And everybody in the village was given a bag of that. And it was just really a wonderful thing. We didn't believe in Santa Claus. We didn't even know about Santa Claus at that time. But this was where the whole community got together at church on Christmas Eve. And that's one of the enduring memories of my life. Thank you.
You're good, just go on. Yeah, there you go.
Church was one thing that we went to regularly. And I can remember thinking back on it, how many times I walked this road from up about a mile up the road here. Sand, parents made me get dressed, and my brother and my brother managed to hide up there. I'd much rather he be here than me.
Your sister too, don't forget that.
Yeah, I can't say that we really supported her, but most of the time we'd try to leave her if we could. But that was too many years ago. The church was a requirement for us. I can remember the Sunday school. We after the service started, we ended up going to Sunday school, and most of the rooms were on the second floor. The memory of that, and climbing those stairs, just has stayed with me. One of the things that is deeply embedded, I accepted Christ during one of the sessions. There was a rail around the preacher's stand, and that was a revival night. Usually sometime during the summer, there would be a revival held at the church, and I can remember going to the rail and kneeling for a long time, it seemed like, before the man who was doing the preaching came to me and accepted. He as I remember it, basically rubbed my forehead and essentially accepted my acceptance of God. And
That's a great story, Jay.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna let Mr. Ray here give a little bit of his recollections. And just one other thing I wanted to say, people always talk about the Methodist Church South and the Methodist Church North. There was a split after the Civil War that essentially went up into the early part of the 20th century. But the old Methodist Church North actually sat over in the Oak Grove across the street. So if you didn't like the preacher at this place, you could walk 25 yards over to the preacher at the next place for about 50 years. This is Ray Gray, y'all.
Well, actually, I don't know what I'm doing up here. Because one thing, I don't belong to this church. I belong to the church in Hatters.
We can fix that.
And I have belonged to it since 1939.
Did not know that.
Now, I remember he was talking about the two churches. I remember when Hatters had two churches. And I'm sure I'm one of the few people that still remember it. And they had the Up Road Church and the Down Road Church, we called it. And the Down Road Church, what I remember more about it than anything else, is it had two front doors, separated. And I often wondered if it was because at one time, right after the Civil War, we had a bunch of blacks. And back in them days, why they segregated them. But that's one thing that I always remembered was that church with the two separate doors to go in it. But like I say, I moved up here after I got married and moved to Matteo, and then we moved up here. And my wife, she belonged to Mount Olive Church in Matteo. And so she had hers and Ray Jr.'s membership changed to here. And I never had mine changed. It's still in Hatters as far as I know.
All right.
That's right.
All right, Stephanie.
Who's hungry? We have a bunch of food and